everyone, I am Tamara and welcome to another episode of Woman Up. If you're watching my second video or if you're joining me for the first time, please like, share and subscribe and get the Woman Up podcast out there. So today I will be talking about a topic that I had experience on that affected me somewhat, and I would just like to encourage someone and enlighten someone as in regards to that. And this is the dependability that we have on other persons for our happiness and for our comfort, right? Sometimes there are people in our lives or persons in our life that we are so dependent on. And when I say dependent, I don't really mean like you are financially dependent on the person. I mean that you depend on them emotionally. Your mental state has a lot to do with whether or not this person is present or whether this person is absent. The type of persons that you feel like you cannot live without. And yes, it is good, very good, to have someone that you are that comfortable with, to feel like this person is my safe place and this person is my safe haven. When I am with this person, I know that I am good. Whether or not I am with them, I know they have my heart. They'll protect me. But what happens when your safe space is no longer your safe space? How do you deal with not having that person as a safe space? So I am going to get a bit personal because I am going to share my story, and I don't know, even now I am going through the motions. I am, as I mentioned earlier on my next episode, I am still healing. I am still trying to cope, but I have an idea what it is like to lose a safe space. So I was married. I got married pretty young. I was like 22 years old. My ex-husband was 23, right? We were good. We had a good relationship most times because you know and I know how a relationship and a marriage is, right? And there is no guarantee that every day is going to be nice and sunny and all of that. So we were married for 11 years, shy of 12 years, like maybe a couple months before 12 years. He left Jamaica on a vacation. I kind of had an idea that he wasn't coming back, right? But when my friend and I was driving him to the airport, we were talking to him, and because we didn't have a bad relationship, everything was okay, I guess. He was complaining about financial situations and stuff, and we were telling him to come. So we had certain things in place, and we really felt, my friend and I, like he was coming back, but he never did until like maybe a month ago. That's another story. Anyway, we took him to the airport, and he was there. He was abroad and he was working, right? And when it was time, because I knew the date he has on his ticket and so on, and when it was time for him to come, he didn't. So he told me of his decision, and I said, okay. In my mind, I was still with him. We still talk every day. In the morning, in the evening, I still felt somewhat dependent on him emotionally, because I could jump home, take care of my kids, make them dinner, go in my room, close my door, and we could still talk for hours. So he was still there, was still present, and I still felt some hope somewhat. But everything crashed after his sister came and she brought a divorce paper that I knew nothing about, and said her brother told her that we spoke about it and it was okay. So like I had these papers and I was saying to myself, oh my God, what I am going to do. So this is when the realization that I no longer have him as my safe space. My relationship is no longer a relationship where we are no longer in a committed relationship, so he would not be present. It was then that the realization that I realized, and it was somewhat scary for me because for one, I was living my biggest fear. My biggest fear was to raise my kids by myself, I am telling you. So for all this, the single mothers, ladies, I know what it is like. None of us planned, none of us just get up and say, okay, we're going to have these kids and we're going to be raising these kids by ourselves. None of us actually does that. We go into a relationship, we bear children believing that we will have a partner, and then we find ourselves alone, and it is never an easy situation, right? So for myself, I was scared. As I said before, I was living my biggest fear of my biggest fear of raising my kids alone, and now I have to deal with the situation of not having the person that I planned my future with me, and it was shattering. It was heartbreaking, right? So from then on, the relationship got kind of off, and I knew at that point that I had to deal with not having a safe space. So this is it. Sometimes it's not, as I said before, financially that we are dependent on these persons, but we are dependent on them for emotional support, and it is hard when you lose that. But how do we trust someone that much, right? To How do we trust someone that much to allow our happiness, our existence, right, to be dependent on whether or not they are present? So I am kind of talking from the mistakes I make, because at one point I never felt like I could live without this man. I felt like if I remember one time going to my bed and I dreamt that we were no longer together, and in my dream I was a mad woman. I was on the street, I was eating out of garbage. And that is kind of the mindset that I had. I was so dependent on him for everything, and I never felt like it was possible for me to live without him. So when I was faced with the situation, I am not going to lie, I cried for like 2 to 3 months, and I somewhat, not completely, but I neglected the care of my kids. I was still there, but I was not present in their life. I was just there because it's like I didn't know how to do this. He was a present dad. He was at PTA meetings. He was at every school functions, and I could work, and I could know that I am at work and something was happening at one of the kids' school, and he would be there. He used to get the kids ready and he used to take them to work with him sometimes, and then I lost all of that, and I was like kind of hanging. So I was somewhat, I was sad, but I was angrier because I felt like he took something from me that he had no right to. And everyone has the right to live a life that they feel like is comfortable, like it is pleasing to them. And that was what he wanted to do, and I couldn't stop him. So how did I deal with it, and how do I reach the point where I'm present in my life, and I am present in my kids' life, and I am present at work, I'm present in my business, and I am present when it comes to even my extended family sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes, right? The first thing I had to do was I had to accept the fact that this he was gone and this was over, and I had to move on. And once I accepted, it was a bit easier for me to move on, right? I I accepted the fact that I was the only one who was there for my kids, and if I am not present and he is not present, what would happen eventually to my kids? So I started trying my best to be present for them. I started attending the PTA meetings on my own. I started trying to go to the sports day and the functions. I started getting to know the teachers when they change classes and stuff like that. Like before he left, I wouldn't do these things. Um even simple grocery shopping, I was dependent on him to do that because he was such a present person, and he would just run to the supermarket and get everything, and I had to learn how to do that again. So at first, I'm telling you the truth, I started cooking maybe once or twice a week because I felt there was no need to. Yes, my kids would eat very small, simple stuff, and then I would just not go to the supermarket. I do a lot of fast food shopping, and I depleted a lot of funds, a lot of money that I could have saved was spent carelessly because I wasn't present. So that was the second thing I started looking into, because I'm saying, okay, so I have to be handling financial situations and financial stuff for myself. And there, even though he was assisting us financially, the burden was still mine to carry. Before him, I just know that bills were paid and groceries were bought and the kids were sent to school. So now I had to do budgeting. I had to cut out fast food. I had to, not completely, but somewhat. I was doing a little bit of that too much, and I had to move on from that because we couldn't live, my kids and I couldn't live like that. So that's the second thing that I did. What else affected me was the fact that I felt like I couldn't be happy again. That's a hard one. I felt like I couldn't be happy. I was not used to doing anything alone, and no, I was alone, right? Except for having my kids and a few, very few good friends. So I had to learn to I had to relearn to be alone. That was very hard. I I realized that the decisions that I would have been making with him, I had to make it up by myself, and I had to buckle up. I have to put on my big girl pants and say, okay, there's no one here to make these decisions. So I am in charge. You are in charge, right? And I started practicing my decision making skills, because I would still sometimes call him to make decisions. And I know that he has moved on, and it was time for me to do the same. So I had to just start making the decisions myself. At first I tried solo dates, like I went out by myself, and I was so sad. I was sitting in this place and I would leave crying. And it took some time for me. It took some time for me to get over being alone, right? Another aspect of my life that has changed, because there was no longer anyone present to make these decisions, to handle my budgeting, to be present for me, to support me financially. I realized another thing that was being affected was another thing that I need to deal with was getting back out there and dating. And at first, it was hard. I didn't like anybody, and I judged everyone based on what he would do. And because of that, I wouldn't talk to anyone. I wouldn't talk to anyone, because I was stuck on wondering if this other person would do the same thing. And I can tell you that I have completely gotten over the situation, but I would be lying. But this is my advice to you, right? Based on what I have been through. You can not be in a situation where you feel like you can't live without someone, because sometimes it's not a divorce, it's not separation that breaks up someone. Sometimes it's death, sometimes it's situations beyond our control. And it is not right for us to completely be dependent on someone else to make us happy if we can't be happy for ourselves. That is unfair. So I'd say learn to be happy by yourself, happy with yourself. And then when you're in a relationship or you're in a marriage, you bring that happiness, that love that you have developed for yourself. You bring this into your marriage and your relationship, and it will be so good. But self-love, self-appreciation, self-care is so important. You see, once you master loving yourself, being happy with yourself, being happy by yourself, once you master that, even if there's a relationship that didn't work out or something, you will be good. You will be good. So even for my ladies that are my gents that is in a relationship, and you are completely dependent on this person to keep you happy, I suggest you change that, right? I suggest you change that, because as I stated before, once you learn to love yourself, once you learn self-care, once you learn to be happy with yourself, whatever situation that you are faced with, you'll find yourself again. I can guarantee that. If you have watched my video so far, please like, subscribe, and share my YouTube channel. And I look forward to having you. Also, please comment on anything that you'd like me to talk about, because I am really taking those suggestions seriously. So anything that you'd like me to talk about, dealing with divorce, anything, just leave a comment, and I'll be sure to talk about it once I can, right? I am Tamara again, and thank you for watching Woman Up.